Chosen one, you are not here by accident. You didn't stumble onto this message and you didn't press play by coincidence. This moment has been appointed. Heaven aligned your steps, your timing and your spirit to hear this now. And if you feel a quiet urgency in your chest, it's because something in the unseen is already moving on your behalf. Chosen one, hear this carefully. Thinking is dying in the world, not fading, not slowing down, dying. And the fact that you can sense it, the fact that this truth resonates instead of confusing you, is evidence that you have been preserved for a time like this. While others surrendered their discernment, heaven guarded your mind. Anointed one, you are standing at the edge of a supernatural shift. A moment where clarity replaces confusion, where elevation follows isolation, and where divine provision begins to overtake human limitation. As it is written, "My people perish for lack of knowledge, but you were never meant to perish." You were marked to perceive. Right now, heaven is separating thinkers from followers, watchers from wanderers, and those who hear truth from those who flee it. Stay with this word, let it settle, and as you listen, align your spirit, quietly subscribe to what heaven is releasing here. And if this confirms what you felt, type 777 in the comments as a sign of agreement. Chosen one, prepare yourself. What's about to be revealed will sharpen your mind, steady your spirit, and position you for what heaven has already approved. Chosen one. What you are sensing is real. This uneasiness you felt when you look at the world, this quiet dissonance in your spirit, when conversations feel shallow, reactions feel rehearsed, and outrage feels manufactured, it's not imagination, it's discernment. And discernment is costly because it means you can no longer pretend that the descent isn't happening. Anointed one, humanity is not drifting off course gently. It is in a steep dive. And the most dangerous part is not the fall itself, but how many people are unaware they are falling. They are distracted, entertained, emotionally stimulated, but inwardly disengaged. And the fact that you can see this even faintly already sets you apart. Scripture says that eyes see and ears hear because heaven opens them. Not everyone is given that grace. I remember a season in my own life when I couldn't explain why everything around me felt louder, faster, and emptier all at the same time. People were speaking constantly, yet saying nothing. Opinions were everywhere, but wisdom was scarce. And I started to wonder if something was wrong with me until I realized something deeper was happening. Thinking itself was becoming rare. Discernment was becoming uncomfortable. And truth was becoming inconvenient. Chosen one, thinking requires effort. It requires stillness. It requires the willingness to sit with discomfort instead of anesthetizing it. Most people don't want that. They want relief, not revelation. So they outsource their thinking. They hand their mind to whatever feels safest, loudest, or most repeated. And when a mind is handed over, it doesn't matter who takes it, someone always benefits. This is why you see people follow ideas they never examined, defend narratives they never questioned, and fight for beliefs they can't explain. It's not because they are evil, it's because they are tired. And exhaustion makes people vulnerable to suggestion. The book of Proverbs says that wisdom cries out in the streets, but fools despise understanding. Not because they hate truth, but because truth demands responsibility. Chosen one, look around your daily life. Watch how quickly people change their convictions when the crowd shifts. How confidently they deny what they once celebrated. How boldly they reject what they quietly participated in. This is not hypocrisy alone. This is herd survival. The instinct to belong is stronger than the desire to be right for most people, and when belonging becomes God, truth becomes a threat. I've seen this in real conversations. Someone nodding along privately, then going silent publicly. Someone agreeing in the shadows, then distancing themselves in the light. And it hurts especially when you're someone who values honesty. But hear this, your discomfort is not a flaw. It's evidence that you were not designed to move with the herd. Anointed one, the world right now rewards emotion over clarity, outrage over understanding, reaction over reflection. It is a feeding frenzy of feelings where the loudest emotion wins and the quietest truth is buried. And just like blood in the water draws sharks, emotional chaos draws those who thrive on division, control, and confusion. Humanity is not thinking, it is reacting. This is why thinkers are treated strangely. You've felt it. The subtle distancing, the labels, the way people look at you when you refuse to pick a side blindly. You are not being rejected because you are wrong. You are being resisted because you interrupt the trance. Jesus said the light is hated because it exposes what hides in the dark, and exposure is uncomfortable for those who prefer sleep. Chosen one, there is a cost to seeing clearly. It can feel lonely. It can feel isolating. There were moments in my own journey when I tried to shrink my questions just to keep the peace. I tried to soften my clarity so others wouldn't feel challenged, and every time I did, I felt my spirit weaken, because you cannot betray your discernment without paying a price internally. Here is something heaven wants you to understand deeply. If you have found yourself pulling back from people lately, you are not becoming cold, you are becoming careful. You are not withdrawing out of pride, but out of preservation. Truth seekers carry a weight that casual minds cannot hold. And it is not your assignment to wake up those who have chosen comfort over consciousness. The Stoics said you are responsible only for what is within your control. Scripture echoes this when it speaks about guarding your heart, for from it flow the issues of life. Your mind is sacred ground, chosen one. And many people are surrendering theirs freely, scrolling, absorbing, reacting, repeating. But you are pausing, you are noticing, you are discerning. That is not accidental, that is preparation. Yes, you still live in the world, you still work, you still interact. But you are learning the difference between presence and entanglement. You are learning when to speak and when to step away, when to engage and when to disengage, and there is no guilt in that. Even Jesus withdrew from the crowds when the noise threatened the mission. Chosen one. If you can think for yourself even a little, you are already ahead of the majority, not because you are smarter, but because you are willing. Willing to sit with truth, willing to feel discomfort, willing to stand alone if necessary. And heaven sees that willingness. Should we be concerned? Yes. The direction of the herd matters. Mass movements shape history, and a herd that does not think can be led anywhere. But should you despair? No, because something else is happening quietly. I've felt it too. A faint stirring, a subtle awakening. A few people stepping aside, lifting their heads, asking real questions again. And it only takes a few. Truth does not need volume. It needs clarity. It does not need approval. It needs alignment. And when alignment meets divine timing, dominoes fall, illusions crack, spells weaken, and awakenings spread not loudly, but irreversibly. So hold the line, chosen one. Stay awake, stay grounded, stay honest. Your mind is the one thing this world cannot take unless you hand it over, and you will not, because you were preserved for this moment, and heaven is not finished with you yet. Chosen one, I want you to understand something most people never stop long enough to realize. This collapse of thinking did not happen overnight. It was slow, strategic, and subtle. It crept in through convenience, comfort, and constant stimulation. Little by little, the world traded depth for speed, wisdom for information, and truth for whatever felt easiest to digest in the moment. I remember a time when I noticed my own attention being pulled apart. Notifications, headlines, endless opinions, all demanding a reaction, none inviting reflection. And I caught myself feeling tired without having done anything physical. That's when it became clear to me mental exhaustion is the goal. Because a tired mind does not resist. A tired mind does not question. A tired mind accepts whatever it is given. Chosen one. This is why the system feeds on distraction. Not because distraction is evil in itself, but because it keeps people from sitting alone with their thoughts. Silence has become threatening. Stillness feels uncomfortable. And when a person cannot sit in stillness, they cannot hear discernment. Scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." But stillness requires courage in a world addicted to noise. Most people are not choosing deception intentionally. They are choosing relief. Relief from thinking, relief from responsibility, relief from the burden of deciding what is true. So they borrow opinions, they adopt identities, they repeat phrases that feel safe because everyone else is saying them. And before they realize it, they are defending ideas they never examined, protecting systems that do not protect them. Chosen one. When a society stops teaching people how to think, it becomes very easy to teach them what to think. And that shift is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to any civilization. We have more access to information than any generation before us, yet less wisdom than many that came before. Tools have increased, but understanding has decreased. Knowledge is abundant, but discernment is rare. I've spoken to people who can quote headlines perfectly, but cannot explain why they believe what they believe. I've seen arguments filled with passion, but empty of logic. And what struck me most was not the anger, it was the fear underneath it. Fear of being wrong, fear of being alone, fear of being cast out of the group. Because in a herd-driven culture, disagreement feels like exile. Chosen one, that fear is not yours. You were not created to borrow your convictions from crowds. You were created to walk with truth, even when truth costs you comfort. And yes, that cost is real. It may cost you relationships that were built on surface agreement. It may cost you invitations to spaces that require silence to belong. It may cost you the approval of people who only feel safe when everyone thinks the same way. But hear this clearly, heaven does not measure your life by how well you fit in. Heaven measures your life by how faithfully you stand. There was a season when I tried to explain myself constantly. I tried to soften my words, clarify my intentions, justify my questions, hoping people would understand. And the more I tried, the more drained I became. Eventually, I realized something freeing. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Some people are meant to be disturbed by your clarity, not comforted by it. Chosen one. When truth enters a room, it exposes more than lies. It exposes motives. It exposes insecurity. It exposes attachment to illusion. And people who have built their identity on illusion will always resist truth, not because they hate you, but because truth threatens the story they are surviving inside of. This is why cruelty has become socially acceptable, while independent thought has become suspicious. Cruelty requires no reflection. It thrives on reaction. It bonds people through shared outrage, but real thinking slows things down. It asks questions. It interrupts emotional momentum, and that interruption feels dangerous to those who rely on chaos to feel connected. Anointed one. You are not here to join the frenzy. You are here to stand outside of it and see clearly. That does not mean you are better. It means you are responsible. Responsibility always feels heavier than conformity, but responsibility is where authority is born. I want you to hear this without fear. There are agendas in the world. Not mystical fantasies, but real systems of power, profit, and control. And systems like that do not fear violence as much as they fear awareness. Because awareness breaks spells. Awareness weakens manipulation. Awareness makes people harder to move without consent. Most people never question because questioning would force them to admit how much they surrendered already. And that realization is painful. So they double down. They defend harder. They mock thinkers. They label discernment as arrogance. But deep down they sense something is off, even if they cannot name it. Chosen one. You are not responsible for carrying their denial. You are responsible for guarding your mind. Scripture speaks about renewing the mind daily, not once, not occasionally, daily. Because the pressure to conform is constant. The pull to sleepwalk through life is relentless. If you have felt tired of explaining yourself, that is not weakness. That is wisdom forming. Even Jesus said not to cast pearls before those who cannot value them. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Not everyone earns your clarity. Discernment is not secrecy, it is stewardship. And let me say this gently but firmly, isolation is not always punishment. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes heaven removes noise so you can hear again. Sometimes distance is not rejection, but preparation. I've walked through seasons where the room got very quiet, and at first it felt like loss. But later I realized the quiet was making space for something stronger to form. Chosen one. You are being trained to think clearly in a world that profits from confusion. You are being trained to remain calm in a culture addicted to reaction. You are being trained to see patterns where others see chaos. That training does not happen in crowds. It happens in moments of separation, reflection, and surrender. Do not let anyone shame you for choosing peace over noise. Do not let anyone guilt you for stepping back from conversations that drain your spirit. Even the prophets withdrew. Even the apostles rested. Even Christ went into solitude. Solitude is not escape. It is alignment. And here is where hope enters. Quietly, gently, powerfully. There are others like you. You may not see them yet. You may not recognize them immediately. But they are awakening too, not loudly. Not through mass movements, but through subtle shifts in awareness, through questions that no longer go away, through discomfort that refuses to be numbed. And when two awake minds meet, something happens. Clarity strengthens, courage multiplies, truth gains traction. That is how awakenings really spread, not through shouting but through resonance. Chosen one, you were not meant to wake up everyone. You were meant to stay awake yourself. And in doing so, you become a signal, a quiet one, but a powerful one. Because light does not argue with darkness. It simply shines. Stay steady, stay discerning, stay surrendered. Heaven is not only preserving your mind, it is preparing you for alignment, provision, and elevation that require clarity to sustain. Chosen one. There is a reason clarity has become rare. It is not accidental and it is not neutral. A clear mind is difficult to control. A grounded spirit is difficult to manipulate. And a person who can think independently cannot be easily herded into fear, outrage, or dependence. That is why confusion is constantly amplified, while wisdom is quietly sidelined. I want you to notice something in your own life. The moments when you feel most drained are rarely when you are doing hard physical work. They are when you are surrounded by noise, opinions, urgency, and emotional pressure. That exhaustion is not random. It is the cost of being constantly pulled outward instead of anchored inward. And the world is designed to keep you pulled outward. Chosen one. When everything demands your attention, nothing receives your discernment. And discernment is what allows you to see timing, alignment, and opportunity when others only see chaos. Scripture tells us that the sons of Issachar understood the times and knew what Israel ought to do. They were not the loudest tribe, they were the most discerning. And that discernment positioned them for influence far beyond their numbers. You are being shaped in that same way. There was a season in my life when I thought speed was strength. I thought staying busy meant I was moving forward. But I noticed something unsettling. The faster I moved, the less clearly I saw. The more I consumed, the less I understood. And it wasn't until I slowed down that truth began to surface again. Clarity does not live in rush. It lives in presence. Chosen one, the world will always reward urgency. Heaven rewards obedience. Urgency pushes you to react. Obedience teaches you to wait. And waiting does not mean stagnation. It means alignment is happening beneath the surface. Just as seeds break open underground before anything appears above ground, discernment deepens in unseen places before it ever becomes visible. This is why your isolation has meaning. This is why certain conversations no longer satisfy you. This is why surface-level excitement feels hollow. You are being weaned off stimulation and trained for stewardship. And stewardship requires a mind that can hold weight without collapsing under pressure. I need you to hear this carefully, chosen one. Thinking clearly is not just about surviving this world. It is about being able to receive what heaven is preparing to release into your life. Blessing without clarity becomes burden. Increase without discernment becomes destruction. Elevation without wisdom becomes exposure. I have watched people pray for abundance and then lose themselves when it arrived. Not because wealth is evil, but because they had never learned how to think independently. They borrowed values, adopted desires, and absorbed expectations that were never theirs. And when pressure came, they folded. Because borrowed minds cannot carry real authority. You are being protected from that. Heaven does not pour new wine into old wineskins. That is not punishment. That is mercy. Your mind is being renewed so your life can be expanded without breaking you. That is why this season feels intense internally, even if nothing dramatic is happening externally. Internal alignment always precedes external manifestation. Chosen one. The world tells you to follow your emotions. Heaven teaches you to govern them. Emotions are not evil, but they are terrible leaders. They react to surface-level information. They respond to stimulation. And when emotion leads, truth is often sacrificed for relief. This is why emotional manipulation is so effective in mass movements. It bypasses thought and goes straight for reaction. You were not designed to live that way. You were designed to feel deeply, think clearly, and move intentionally. And that combination is rare. It makes you slower to rush, harder to deceive, and more difficult to control. That is why your pace may not match the world's pace. That is not delay. That is precision. There will be moments when you are tempted to doubt yourself, when it seems like everyone else is moving forward while you are standing still. But hear this: many people are moving fast in the wrong direction. Speed does not equal progress. Alignment does. Chosen one. When you choose clarity over conformity, you are choosing a narrower path. Not because heaven wants to restrict you, but because focus requires boundaries. Wide paths accommodate crowds. Narrow paths refine vision. And refined vision is what allows you to see opportunities others walk past. This is where the supernatural begins to intersect with the practical. When your mind is clear, you begin to notice patterns. When your spirit is grounded, you sense timing. When your emotions are governed, you make decisions that compound instead of collapse. This is how provision flows differently into your life, not through chaos, but through alignment. I have experienced this personally. There were moments when opportunities came quickly, but something in my spirit hesitated. They looked good on paper. They promised speed, recognition, and relief. But clarity whispered no, and walking away felt costly in the moment. Yet later, when I saw what those paths required, I understood the protection. Chosen one discernment will often save you from blessings that would have broken you. And the more you honor that discernment, the stronger it becomes. You begin to trust the quiet knowing instead of the loud promise. You learn to wait without anxiety. You learn to move without panic. That posture is rare, and it is powerful. This is also why your circle is shrinking. Not because you are becoming distant, but because alignment demands compatibility. Not everyone can walk at your pace. Not everyone can hold your questions. Not everyone can sit in silence without needing to fill it. And that is okay. Jesus did not explain everything to everyone. He spoke in parables to the crowds and in clarity to the few. Not because he was withholding, but because revelation is received according to readiness. You are being prepared for a level of understanding that not everyone wants. Chosen one, there is a transfer happening in the earth, not just of resources, but of responsibility, of influence, of authority. And those who receive it will not be the loudest or the most popular. They will be the most discerning, the most grounded, the most disciplined in thought. That is why thinking is under attack, because thinking is the gateway to stewardship. You are being trained to see beyond trends, beyond cycles, beyond surface-level narratives. You are being trained to hold vision when others hold opinions. And vision carries weight. Vision attracts provision. Vision requires clarity to sustain. So do not rush this season. Do not resist the stillness. Do not apologize for your discernment. This refining of your mind is not delaying your breakthrough. It is making sure your breakthrough does not destroy you. Stay present. Stay sober-minded. Stay surrendered. What is being formed in you now will determine what can be entrusted to you next. Chosen one. There is another layer to this that few are willing to face. When thinking begins to die in a society, it is not just intelligence that fades, accountability fades with it. A mind that no longer examines truth cannot hold itself responsible for its actions. And when accountability disappears, anything can be justified, explained away, or blamed on someone else. You've seen this already. People excusing behavior they once condemned, redefining right and wrong based on convenience, shifting standards depending on who benefits. This is what happens when thinking is replaced by reaction. Morality becomes flexible, truth becomes negotiable, and integrity becomes optional. Chosen one. You were not built for that kind of inner instability. You were designed to be anchored. And anchoring requires something the world is actively discouraging: self-examination. The willingness to look inward and ask, is this true? Is this right? Is this aligned? Most people avoid those questions because they expose contradictions. But you lean into them even when it's uncomfortable. I remember a moment when I realized how rare that had become. I was listening to someone speak passionately about an issue they cared deeply about. When I asked a simple, sincere question, not to attack, just to understand, the conversation shut down instantly. Not because the answer was complex, but because the question itself threatened their certainty. That's when it hit me. Many people are not defending truth. They are defending identity. And identity built on borrowed beliefs is fragile. Chosen one. When thinking dies, identity becomes performative. People become what the moment rewards. They speak what the group applauds. They oppose what the group condemns, not because they have examined the issue, but because belonging feels safer than honesty. But safety purchased with silence always comes at the cost of the soul. This is why you often feel like an outsider, even when you're surrounded by people. Your spirit senses when conversations lack substance. Your mind notices when arguments collapse under basic scrutiny, and your heart feels heavy when truth is sacrificed for approval. That heaviness is not judgment, it's grief. Grief for what could be if people were willing to think again. Chosen one. Let me tell you something that may bring both comfort and clarity. You are not meant to carry that grief alone. In fact, you are not meant to carry it at all. Your role is not to mourn the world's blindness, but to remain clear-eyed within it. Clarity is your assignment, not persuasion, not argument, not rescue. Even Jesus allowed people to walk away confused when they refused to hear. He did not chase them down with explanations. He let truth stand on its own weight, and that weight is enough. There is a subtle temptation that comes with discernment, the temptation to grow bitter, to look at the herd and feel contempt, to feel superior because you see what others ignore. But hear this carefully. Chosen one bitterness is just another form of entanglement. It keeps you emotionally bound to the very thing you are meant to stand apart from. You are not here to judge the sleepers. You are here to remain awake. I've had to learn this the hard way. There were seasons when frustration hardened into resentment, when I thought, how can they not see this? And that frustration quietly drained my peace. It took time to realize that discernment without compassion becomes pride, and pride clouds clarity just as much as ignorance does. Chosen. One clarity must be carried with humility to remain pure. The reason heaven trusts you with awareness is not so you can feel above others, but so you can remain steady when others panic, when systems shake, when narratives collapse, when crowds react emotionally. You are meant to be a stabilizing presence first within yourself, then quietly in the world around you. This is where supernatural alignment begins to show up practically. When your mind is clear and your emotions are governed, you make decisions differently. You don't rush into agreements because they are popular. You don't chase opportunities because they promise quick validation. You don't fear missing out because you trust timing. That trust changes the kind of doors that open to you. I've watched people chase momentum and burn out. I've watched others wait a line and then step into opportunities that felt effortless by comparison. The difference was not intelligence, it was discernment. One group reacted, the other listened. Chosen one. The world will call your patience hesitation. It will call your silence weakness. It will call your questions resistance. But heaven calls it wisdom. And wisdom builds slowly, but it lasts. This is also why your path has not been crowded. Crowds require compromise. Depth requires solitude. And solitude, when embraced intentionally, becomes a place of refinement. In quiet moments you begin to notice how much of the world's noise was shaping your thoughts without your consent. And as that influence fades, your own inner voice grows clearer. That clarity is not empty, it is being filled. Scripture speaks about a sound mind as a gift, not a frantic mind, not a reactive mind, a sound mind. Sound minds create sound decisions. Sound decisions create stable lives. Stable lives become platforms for influence that does not corrupt. Chosen one influence is coming to you, whether through resources, leadership, provision, or responsibility. And that influence will require a mind that cannot be easily swayed. That is why this season feels like training, because it is. You are learning when to disengage, when to speak, when to wait, when to walk away. These are not passive skills, they are strategic. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you strengthen a muscle that will serve you later. Do not underestimate this preparation. There will come moments when people seek your perspective, not because you are loud, but because you are steady. Not because you chase relevance, but because relevance finds you when confusion rises. In times of instability, clarity becomes currency. Chosen one. Your ability to think clearly will open doors that emotion-driven people cannot access. It will protect you from traps disguised as blessings. It will keep you grounded when others are intoxicated by attention, outrage, or fear. And it will allow you to steward whatever heaven places in your hands without losing yourself. This is why the pressure has been internal more than external. Why the battle has been about focus, about boundaries, about rest. Heaven has been strengthening your inner framework so your outer life can expand without collapse. Do not rush to explain yourself to those who do not want to understand. Do not dilute your clarity to make others comfortable. Do not trade peace for proximity. Remain awake. Remain humble. Remain clear. The world may be losing its ability to think, but you are being sharpened. And that sharpening is not for survival alone, it is for stewardship, stability, and the quiet authority that comes from seeing clearly when others cannot. Chosen one. There is a moment that comes quietly, almost unnoticed, when clarity stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like strength. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with applause. It shows up as calm when others panic, restraint when others rush, and certainty when others are easily swayed. That moment is closer than you think. Up to now, your discernment may have felt isolating, like you were carrying something heavy while others moved freely. But what you were carrying was not weight meant to crush you, it was capacity being built. Capacity to hold responsibility, capacity to steward influence, capacity to walk through coming shifts without losing your footing. Chosen one. The world is entering a season where clarity will be rare and therefore valuable. When confusion increases, those who can think clearly become anchors. When systems wobble, those who are grounded become reference points. And when narratives change overnight, those who are not emotionally owned by the crowd become trusted voices. This is not about prominence, it is about placement. I want you to reflect honestly for a moment. There were times when you could have chosen the easier path, the popular opinion, the faster route, the safer silence, and something in you resisted, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet refusal to betray what you knew was true. That refusal may have cost you opportunities, relationships, or momentum in the short term. But it preserved something far more important, your integrity. Integrity is the foundation of authority. Without it, power corrodes quickly. I have seen people rise fast and fall faster because their minds were not their own. They were driven by praise, shaped by trends, and steered by fear of disapproval. When pressure came, they had nothing solid to stand on, and pressure always comes, especially when elevation is involved. Chosen one, the elevation that is aligning with your life will require you to remain internally independent, even as your external world expands. More access brings more voices. More provision brings more opinions. More influence brings more pressure to conform. If your thinking is not anchored, you will be pulled apart. This is why heaven has been training you to be selective. Selective with your attention, selective with your energy, selective with who has access to your inner world. This is not selfishness, this is stewardship. There is a misconception that loving people means absorbing their chaos, that being compassionate means carrying their confusion. But compassion without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Even Jesus withdrew. Even he set limits. Even he chose silence when speaking would not bring fruit. Chosen one, you are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to disengage from conversations that lead nowhere. You are allowed to step back from environments that dull your discernment. And you are allowed to do so without explaining yourself. That freedom is part of your maturation. The more you honor your clarity, the more clearly heaven can guide you. Guidance is difficult when the mind is cluttered. Direction is distorted when emotions are unmanaged. But when the inner world is quiet, alignment becomes unmistakable. I want to share something personal with you. There was a time when I believed that saying yes more often would open doors faster. And it did, but not the right ones. The doors that opened required compromise, haste, and constant performance. Eventually I learned that the most aligned opportunities arrive without pressure. They don't demand urgency. They don't threaten loss if you pause. They invite discernment rather than rush. Chosen one. Heaven's invitations do not create anxiety. They bring peace even when they stretch you. This is how you begin to recognize what is meant for you. Not by how exciting it looks, but by how steady it feels. Not by how many people approve, but by how aligned your spirit becomes when you consider it. As thinking continues to decline in the world, pressure will increase on those who still think. You may be labeled distant, difficult, or detached. Let them label. Labels do not define you. Clarity does. Your value does not come from being understood by everyone. It comes from being aligned with truth. This is also why your relationships are changing. You are no longer drawn to intensity for intensity's sake. You no longer feel energized by drama disguised as passion. You crave depth. You crave substance. You crave conversations that require thought, not performance. And that craving is a sign of growth. Chosen one, as your clarity deepens, your tolerance for noise decreases. That is not arrogance. That is refinement. The world celebrates stimulation. Heaven cultivates stillness. And stillness sharpens perception. When your inner world is still, you can sense when something is off before it becomes obvious. You can feel misalignment before it turns into loss. You can recognize timing without forcing movement. This ability will protect you in ways you cannot yet see. There are coming seasons when many will react emotionally to shifts they do not understand. Markets will move. Systems will adjust. Narratives will reverse, and in those moments the herd will stampede, but you will not, because you have learned to pause, to assess, to think. Chosen one, pausing is not falling behind. It is positioning yourself to move accurately. Accuracy matters more than speed. This is where provision begins to flow differently, not through frantic striving but through alignment. Not through chasing, but through recognition. When your thinking is clear, you see opportunities others miss. When your emotions are governed, you avoid traps others fall into. When your spirit is anchored, you are not shaken by surface-level turbulence. I want you to hear this without fear. You are being prepared for influence that requires discernment to sustain. Whether that influence shows up as wealth, leadership, responsibility, or authority, it will demand clarity. And clarity is exactly what heaven has been cultivating in you. Do not underestimate the value of this season. It may feel quiet, but it is not empty. It may feel slow, but it is not stagnant. Roots grow in silence, foundations form underground, and only what is built deeply can rise without collapsing. Chosen one. Your willingness to think, to question, to pause, to reflect, these are not traits the world rewards now, but they are traits heaven trusts, and trust precedes transfer. As you continue to honor this process, you will notice something shift inside you. Less urgency, less need to prove, less fear of missing out. In its place, a growing confidence, not loud, not performative, just steady. That steadiness will become your signature. Remain faithful to your discernment. Remain gentle with yourself. Remain surrendered to truth. The world may be losing its ability to think, but you are gaining the capacity to steward what others cannot hold. And that capacity will make room for what heaven is ready to release into your life. Chosen one. There comes a point when the training becomes visible not to the crowd, but to you. It's the moment you realize you no longer feel pulled in every direction. The urgency that once pressured you has loosened its grip. The fear of missing out has quieted, and in its place there is a calm certainty that wasn't there before. That certainty is not arrogance, it is alignment. You have been learning how to stand still while everything around you moves erratically, and that skill is more powerful than it looks. When the world is reactive, stability becomes leadership. When emotions are weaponized, clarity becomes protection. And when thinking is rare, those who can think clearly become quietly indispensable. I want you to notice how your decisions have changed. You don't rush the way you used to. You don't need immediate validation. You don't feel compelled to explain yourself to everyone. That shift did not happen by accident. It happened because your mind has been strengthened, and a strengthened mind attracts a different kind of future. There is a reason Scripture speaks so often about wisdom before wealth, understanding before increase, and discernment before authority. These are not moral suggestions, they are structural requirements. Anything that grows without structure eventually collapses under its own weight. Heaven does not build carelessly. You may not realize it yet, but you are already being trusted with more. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes that trust looks like restraint, opportunities that don't come, doors that stay closed, conversations that end early. But restraint is not denial, it is refinement. It is heaven saying, not yet, your foundation is still forming. I've lived through seasons where I thought momentum was passing me by. Others seemed to accelerate while I was forced to wait. But later, when pressure exposed the cracks in what they built quickly, I understood the mercy of delay. Speed reveals intentions. Time reveals alignment. Chosen one. The clarity you carry now will become the filter through which everything else enters your life. Relationships, opportunities, resources, influence. If it does not align, it will not attach. And that selectivity will save you years of unnecessary struggle. The world often glorifies those who can adapt to anything. Heaven honors those who refuse to adapt to what violates truth. Flexibility without discernment becomes compromise, but discernment with humility becomes authority. You are entering a season where fewer things will excite you, but the things that do will matter. You will no longer be impressed by noise. You will be drawn to substance. And that change will feel unfamiliar at first, because excitement is loud and clarity is quiet. But quiet does not mean weak. It means focused. There will be moments when others misunderstand your calm. They may interpret it as detachment. They may assume you don't care. But the truth is, you care too much to be careless with your mind, your energy, and your spirit. You have learned that not every battle deserves engagement, and not every opinion deserves your attention. That wisdom will preserve you when others burn out. As thinking continues to decline around you, you may notice an increase in extremes, more outrage, more polarization, more emotional swings. This is not strength, it is instability. And instability always seeks something solid to lean on. This is why people will begin to notice your steadiness, even if they can't articulate why. You will be asked for your perspective not because you are loud, but because you are clear. Not because you chase relevance, but because relevance finds those who remain grounded when others lose balance. In seasons of confusion, clarity becomes a resource. Chosen one, do not rush to monetize that clarity or turn it into performance. Steward it first. Let it mature. Let it deepen. Authority that arrives before maturity becomes a burden, but authority that arrives after refinement becomes a gift to you and to others. There is also a spiritual truth you need to hold on to. Clarity attracts resistance before it attracts reward. When you stop moving with the herd notices. When you stop reacting emotionally, emotional systems lose leverage over you. That loss of leverage can provoke discomfort in others. Do not internalize it. Resistance is often confirmation that alignment is working. Remain gentle. Remain grounded. Remain unattached to outcomes you do not control. The more you practice discernment, the more intuitive your life becomes. You will begin to sense when to move without forcing it, when to wait without anxiety, when to speak without over-explaining. That intuition is not guesswork. It is the fruit of a mind that has learned how to listen. Listening is becoming rare. Everyone is broadcasting. Few are hearing. But those who can hear really hear, will recognize opportunity before it announces itself. They will sense danger before it appears obvious. They will recognize alignment before it becomes visible to others. This is how heaven guides quietly. I want to speak directly to the part of you that sometimes wonders if this path is worth it. The solitude, the restraint, the patience. Yes, it is worth it. Because the alternative, living at the mercy of trends, emotions and crowds, costs far more in the long run. Peace is expensive to rebuild once it is lost. You are learning how to live from the inside out rather than being pulled apart by the outside in. That orientation changes everything. It changes how you relate to success, how you respond to pressure, how you define progress. You are no longer measuring your life by speed, applause, or visibility. You are measuring it by alignment, integrity, and sustainability. That shift marks maturity. Chosen one. The world may continue to lose its ability to think, but you are not here to follow the decline. You are here to model another way, quietly, steadily, faithfully, not by preaching at everyone, but by living differently, by choosing clarity when confusion is easier, by choosing restraint when excess is celebrated, by choosing truth when illusion is rewarded. And as you do, something subtle but powerful happens. Your life becomes a signal, not a broadcast, a signal. Those who are ready will recognize it. Those who are not will ignore it. And that is exactly how it should be. Trust the process that has shaped you. Honor the clarity you've been given. Protect the peace you've earned. You are not behind. You are not missing out. You are being positioned. And what is being prepared for you requires a mind that can think, a spirit that can listen, and a heart that can remain steady when the world cannot. Stay awake, stay aligned, stay faithful. Heaven is not finished with what it is forming in you. Chosen one, take a moment and let this settle in your spirit. Yes, the world is shaking. Yes, thinking is under attack. And yes, there is reason to be watchful. But you were not brought this far to fear. You were preserved to see clearly in a time when clarity is rare. You were kept awake while others surrendered their minds, and that alone tells you heaven has a purpose for your life. Anointed one, something is already shifting, quietly, gently, powerfully. A supernatural transfer is in motion, not rushed, not forced, but perfectly timed. This is your kairos moment, your appointed time to walk with discernment, stability, and authority. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be. Truth does not need the majority. It only needs a few who remain awake. And because you see, because you think, because you stayed aligned when it was easier to conform, you are going to be fine. More than fine. You are going to be positioned. So stay faithful. Guard your mind. Walk forward with gratitude for what heaven is already preparing to manifest in your life. And if this word resonated with your spirit, quietly subscribe so you stay aligned with what is being released here. And leave a comment with your city to mark where this awakening is spreading. Chosen one, go in peace. Go in clarity. The world needs what you carry now more than ever.